So what happened to Ahsoka after she left the Jedi Order in Season 5? Well, the episode Gone with a Trace is supposed to answer that question. And the story gets off to an interesting start with Ahsoka crash landing her speeder bike on level 1313 of Coruscant. But of course the Force is with her because she crash lands right next to a repair shop, and this is where we're introduced to Trace. Trace seems to be a character that really wants to help Ahsoka, but there's a certain amount of realism to Trace's character. She needs money and she keeps asking Ahsoka if she's going to pay her, when she can pay her. So I thought that was an interesting way to contrast Ahsoka's life as a Jedi. And as Trace and Ahsoka get to know each other in the repair shop, Trace mentions that the Jedi have forgotten about us. And by us, I believe she means the average person. And it was really interesting to get this perspective, as it confirms that Ahsoka's right. The Jedi are not on the right path. They have lost their way. And to a certain extent, Ahsoka is justified in leaving the Jedi Order. Next up, we're introduced to the character Pinto, who is looking to collect money from Rafa, Trace's older sister. When Trace doesn't have the money to give to Pinto, she ends up getting assaulted by Pinto's muscle, and eventually Ahsoka steps in, and she easily defeats Pinto's thugs, and they have no choice but to retreat. And I absolutely love the next part here, where Trace asks Ahsoka, "Where did you learn to fight like that?" And Ahsoka simply replies, "My older brother," aka Anakin Skywalker, of course. Which is a great moment because it really confirms to us that that is how Ahsoka sees Anakin, sort of as that big brother figure. And on a sadder note, that she left behind that big brother when she left the Jedi Order. From here we move on to an introduction to Rafa, Trace's older sister, who tells Trace that she has a job coming up that's going to allow them to pay off Pinto, so not to worry. And I certainly got some Han Solo vibes from Rafa right away. The fact that she's got this debt similar to Han having that debt to Jabba, and he just needs one more job and he'll be clear of that debt. And also, like Han, Rafa is quite resourceful and ends up getting Ahsoka and Trace a job assembling droids. And at first I totally thought these droids were something we really hadn't seen in Star Wars. They're sort of mech warrior type looking droids. But then I remembered my buddy Chris from the Star Raptor channel pointed out on Twitter that we've already seen a similar story to this one in Forces of Destiny, where Ahsoka has to take on a droid. This droid is rampaging through Coruscant, and after double checking that YouTube video, which is called Path of the Padawan, it definitely seems that these are the same type of droid that Ahsoka takes down in that video. But getting back to the episode here, it seems like Ahsoka does confirm this to us because she mentions that these droids are prone to violence, which of course means that when they turn on one of these droids, it runs off and starts wrecking Coruscant, similar to the droid that Ahsoka encountered in the Forces of Destiny episode. But at this point, we hit one of the highlights of the episode for me, where we see none other than Loth Kats running away from this rampaging droid. Trace is eventually able to turn the droid off, but almost falls to her death. Ahsoka is able to save her using a combination of her forklift speeder thing and the Force, which is nice to see because it means that Ahsoka hasn't cut herself off from the Force. Following this up, we have an argument between Ahsoka, Trace, and Rafa. Ahsoka and Trace want Rafa to dismantle these dangerous droids, but Rafa wants to cash in. And that's exactly what she does. She ends up charging the client extra because the droids are dangerous, and at this point Ahsoka decides it's time to move on, as she clearly doesn't like how Rafa operates. This episode was definitely a big departure from the Bad Batch arc, where we had action sequence after action sequence, but it was interesting. It is clearly a setup episode where we're getting introduced to these new characters, Rafa and Trace, and it was very interesting that we got to see what the average person thought of the Jedi at this moment in the Star Wars timeline, as well as the connection that it had to Forces of Destiny. And don't forget those Loth Kats. It's always awesome to have a Star Wars Rebels connection in any episode of the Clone Wars Season 7. That said, as always, I'm Mike. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.